So, we're going to talk about something you probably never thought you'd hear in the same sentence: ancient ninja techniques and modern data strategy. Yeah, I know, it sounds a little out there, but stick with me, because the connection is actually pretty mind-blowing. Okay, quick. When you hear the word ninja, what's the first thing that pops into your head? It's probably a figure in all black, right? Moving silently through the night, maybe scaling a castle wall, armed with a katana and some throwing stars. That's the image we've all gotten from movies and video games. Well, get this. That image, it's almost completely a myth, a caricature that Hollywood created because, let's be honest, it looks cool. But the reality is so much more fascinating and way more useful to us today. You see, the ninja's most powerful weapon wasn't a sword or a dagger. It was information, data. These guys were essentially feudal Japan's first hackers, its very first data analysts. Their whole art wasn't about fighting. It was about collecting, securing, and using intelligence to win a battle long before it even began. So here's what we're gonna do. First, we're gonna tear down that Hollywood myth. Then, we'll look at how they use disguise for what we'd now call market research. We'll explore their secret codes, which were basically ancient data security. And we'll see how they used psychology in a way that looks a lot like modern marketing. And at the end, we'll wrap it all up into a modern ninja's toolkit you can actually use. All right, first things first. Let's pull the mask off that Hollywood stereotype and find out who the ninjas really were. I love this quote from Stephen K. Hayes because it perfectly captures the mindset shift. For a samurai, honor was everything, face-to-face combat, a glorious death. But for a ninja, that was just bad strategy. What their enemies called cowardice, they just called being smart. It was all about cunning, wit, and playing an intellectual game. So their real job title wasn't assassin, it was more like intelligence operative. Their entire system, called ninjutsu, was this huge, complex skill set for survival. Their main goals were gathering intel, running psychological warfare campaigns, and infiltrating enemy territory without anyone ever knowing they were there. And that brings us to the first core principle. How do you gather information without being noticed? Through the art of disguise, which was basically their version of sophisticated market research. The technique is called Hensō-jutsu. And the key idea here is so brilliant. The goal wasn't to become invisible, that's impossible. The goal was to be overlooked, to be so perfectly blended into the background that people's eyes would just slide right past you. Hiding in plain sight is way more effective than hiding in the shadows. And they had a system for it, called the Shichi-Hol-Dei, the 7 ways of disguise. A ninja was a master actor who could become anyone. Need to know what people are saying? Become an entertainer and listen to the gossip in the local inns. Need to understand the enemy's logistics? Pose as a merchant and map out their supply lines. Each identity was like a key that unlocked a totally different set of data. And the parallels to today are just uncanny. A ninja pretending to be a merchant to check out enemy supplies, that is literally competitive analysis. You know, when a company has its employees go use a rival service to see how it works. Living as a farmer for months to watch troop movements, that's what we call deep field research. Embedding yourself in a market to see how your customers really behave over time. Okay, so you've blended in, you've gathered all this priceless information. What's next? Well, you have to protect it. That brings us to their second master skill, the art of codes, or what we'd call ancient data security. This was called Angō, and ninja clans knew that if their intelligence was intercepted, it was worthless. So they came up with these incredible ways to encrypt messages. They used things like go-shikimai, which was literally just different colors of rice arranged in a specific pattern that only they could read. Or they'd tie knots in a cord, musubibun, where the type and sequence of knots held a secret meaning. The connection to our world is so direct, it's almost funny. Using colored rice to send a message only your team can read, that's the basic idea behind modern data encryption. And they used something called aikotoba, a secret password or phrase, to verify someone's identity. That's the great-great-grandfather of our passwords, and even two-factor authentication. It just goes to show, protecting your data has always been a top priority. All right, you've gathered the data, you've secured it. Now for the fun part. How do you use it? This is the third pillar of ninja strategy, psychology, or as we might call it, a very direct form of ancient marketing. Their psychological warfare game, Shinri Sōsa, was all about manipulating what an enemy thought and did. They were masters of Ryugen Higo, the art of starting and spreading rumors to sow chaos and doubt. They'd figure out who the traitors were in an enemy camp and then accidentally let them overhear fake plans. Or, my personal favorite, they'd pretend to be completely incompetent and unprepared just to lure an arrogant opponent into a trap. What's wild is that this ancient art has now become a modern science. Psychologists have spent decades mapping the very principles of influence the ninja understood intuitively, things like authority, scarcity, and social proof that drive our decisions every single day. And of course, these tactics have their modern and hopefully more ethical counterparts in marketing. Spreading information to shape how people see a situation, that's brand perception management, controlling the story around your company. Causing chaos and making the enemy doubt themselves, that's the whole idea behind guerrilla marketing, using surprise tactics to throw your competitors off balance. It's all about controlling the narrative. So after all this, what's the takeaway? How can we actually use all this ancient wisdom? Let's put it all together into a practical toolkit for the modern ninja. That's you. Here are your 3 core strategies. Number 1, think like a spy. Use that principle of disguise. Get out there and do real boots-on-the-ground research. Talk to customers. Use your competitors' products. Number 2, protect your data. Treat your information like the priceless asset it is. Use the principle of codes and make sure it's secure. And number 3, master influence. Learn the psychology of why people make the choices they do, so you can shape your brand's message effectively. Because in the end, the real power of the ninja was never about being the strongest fighter in the room. It was about something way more powerful, having the intelligence to understand the entire situation so perfectly, to control the flow of information so masterfully that you could win the battle before anyone even drew a sword. And that exact same information strategy is the most powerful weapon any of us can have today. So I want to know, which of these ninja techniques do you think is the most valuable for your job? The disguise of market research, the codes of data security, or the psychology of marketing? Let me know your modern ninjutsu in the comments. And hey, if you liked this, make sure to subscribe, because next time we're digging into the truth about yokai and answering the question, why were the Japanese so afraid of the dark? You are not going to want to miss that one.